The Schools Minister Nick Gibb is with us now. Hello to you, Minister. What are you thinking about a new set?
Very
You like it?
Very
yeah?
nice indeed.
Smells lovely as well, doesn't
Very
it?
clean.
Nice and shiny and new. I'm guessing that's what schools are going to be like as well today for the first time.
Yes, and I was visiting some schools in Leicester 10 days ago, and they did smell of cleaning fluid. A huge amount of effort has been gone into by head teachers and staff up and down the country, making sure that our schools are safe. There are bubbles. In the school I went to, there was a Year 7 zone, a Year 8 zone, all colour-coded. Staggered lunch and playtime breaks, hand sanitisers in classrooms, more hand basins, different entrances to the schools, a huge amount of effort to make sure that schools are safe for young people to come back.
And should it be schools that are paying for that, though, as opposed to the government?
Well, we had a scheme before the summer where schools could claim back up to £75,000 for extra costs, depending on the size of the school, cleaning costs, whether there's a suspected case of COVID and so on. We've just started the first year of a quite a good spending settlement for schools over the next 3 years, £14.5 billion.
I'm just reading 216 million is how much it's going to cost schools for COVID cleaning. Are you going to compensate them for that?
Well, we always keep these issues under review. Schools do have, as I said, a very large increase in spending this year and over the next 2 years to cover these kind of costs. We've also allocated to schools a £1 billion a catch-up fund to help schools to help their pupils catch up from any lost education. So it's a matter of prioritising where do you want the extra funding to go, and we think catch-up is hugely important for young people.
So was that a yes or a no to my question?
Well, we keep it under review, but as I said, the funding settlement for schools this year and the next 2 years that we negotiated with the Treasury has been very generous, and that's the funding that's for these kind of extra
so
incidentals.
It's a maybe.
We keep it under review, Kay.
OK. What percentage of kids going back to school today would you be happy with? Because, as we know, a lot of parents are still very worried about their children going back to school. Well,
what the chief medical officers are saying of all 4 nations is actually it's better now for children to be in school. The risk of catching the virus in the school environment is very low, but the risk of not being in school actually can be quite damaging to children's mental health and also their long-term prospect of education. So the polling has been showing increasing confidence from parents over the last few weeks, and the NAHT published a survey last week showing that something like 97% of schools will be open.
But you must have a percentage rate that you'll be content with. You know, is it 75%? Is it 80%? Is it 100%?
Well, we want all children to be back in
schools.
Last week we had very high levels of attendance at schools in Leicestershire, where they start school early. Over the course of this week, we will see, as each day the new term begins in different local authorities, we will see, I'm confident, increasing numbers of parents sending their children back to school, helping them to catch up, get on track with their education, because that does affect the life chances of those young people.
But what if they don't? What's going to happen to parents if they don't send their kids back to school?
Well, school is mandatory. In this country, we believe in compulsory education. So all the rules about attendance will apply from today in schools.
There'll be some leeway, though.
Well,
you're not going to fine parents straight away, are you?
Fines have always been the last resort for head teachers, but it is a last resort tool that they have to make sure that young people are attending school. Of course, there will be some parents who are concerned, and what I would say to those families is to talk to the head teacher so that he or she can assure them that the measures are in place to keep schools safe. But any concerns that people have, they should raise with the school.
Parents watching this morning, thinking about sending their kids to school, or thinking about not sending their kids to school, what is going to happen if their kids don't go to school today? They'll get a call from the head teacher, they'll get a warning. What's going to happen? Well,
the head teachers and schools, they will be concerned about pupils not attending. They'll want to understand the reasons for any concern, and the heads will want to, assure families that actually the measures that have been taken to keep schools safe have been incredible and I've seen it myself, the efforts that schools have gone to with the hand sanitisers, the extra hand basins,
understand that, Minister,
the cleanliness of the schools to keep it absolutely to minimise any risk of transmitting the virus.
Totally get that, but nevertheless there will still be parents who are concerned. Are we saying that they're going to get a call from the school to start with, and if they continue to break the rules, then there will be a fine, but somewhere down the track?
Well, as I said, it's always a last resort, the issue of fines. Head teachers and staff will be concerned if people are not attending. It is important.
How will that concern manifest itself, I suppose?
Well, schools will have their own approaches to attendance, and they will be phoning. Many schools will be phoning up parents to make sure that they are attending. I've heard of head teachers organising a walking bus to to talk to families who are concerned and to encourage them to come into school, because it does matter. Being in school, what the chief medical officers are saying is that the risk of not attending school now far outweigh the very small risk of the virus being transmitted in the school environment. And they did look also, don't forget, we've had 1.6 million pupils back in school last term, leading up to the summer, when we brought back reception year 1 and year 6.
Yeah.
So, the schools are used to being open. They are used to putting measures in place to keep young people and the staff, of course, safe from the transmission of the virus.
How many cases will be too many in a school and you'll have to close it?
Well, we have now a test and trace system that gives us granular information about whether there has been an increase in the transmission of virus in particular local areas. And where we see that, we will and we have taken action to impose new restrictions in those local areas. So I think parents can be assured. And also we have the thing called the survey testing, where we survey sample households across the country to see if there has been a risk of...
But if there's a COVID case in a classroom, will you just close that classroom? Will you close their whole school? What will you do? Well,
when there's a positive case of coronavirus, then the local public health team will give advice to the school, and that will be about tracing the contacts of that pupil, and then they will be then asked to self-isolate.
So not necessarily closing the school?
Not necessarily. It will depend on the extent of the contacts that pupil has had, whether there are other positive cases of coronavirus in the... But they will take advice from the local health protection scheme. We may be sending in mobile testing units into a school. There's a whole raft of measures that we will take if there are cases of positive cases of coronavirus in the school.
OK, can I rattle through another few questions for you? I know you've got a dash. Exams going back until July, potentially, of next year. Apparently your boss, the Education Secretary, is thinking about it. Tell us more.
Well, in mid-June, he wrote to the regulator directing them to look into the possibility of delaying the exams. We have to take into account the other nations of the UK, Northern Ireland and Wales that use the GCSE and A-levels, but it is something that we are looking at and have been looking at for several weeks.
When will you decide?
We will decide as soon as we have spoken to the other nations, we've taken a decision. We will decide as soon as we can.
OK, so quite soon, within a few weeks?
Well, as soon as we can, yes.
OK.